okay, here's my carpool thoughts as well. Again, I guess this is when I have the most time to be able to record. I wanted to talk today, just a quick video regarding the idea of living in grief versus the idea of living with grief. So when you live in grief and you're constantly just being absorbed, think of it as like you're inside a sleeping bag and you're like trying to walk inside this sleeping bag. That's like living in grief, right? There's barely a way to walk. You're like just basically dragging your feet through life if you're living in grief. When you live with grief, it's as if you're just carrying a purse with you, right? That's living with grief. You carry it with you, and as it starts, and this is actually, my friend sent me a really cool article, a Huffington Post, and it just showed a little bit of that. It's like it starts like this big luggage. Grief can be like this big luggage that you're dragging around. Then it starts to get lighter. Starts to get lighter to the point that it's just a purse. And it doesn't mean you ever really are done. You know, grief is something you still are, you know, carrying with you. But again, you're not living in it. That is, I think, a big distinction. And a lot of times I think that culturally, I know that for sure, something culturally, at least in my culture, I feel, I'm from Colombia, and I feel that there's this idea, maybe it's just maybe from the movies that we watch or things like that, that when somebody like dies, people are like wailing or throwing themselves in the grave, or, you know, all these things. Or if you're grieving, let's say, even because you've just finished a relationship. Again, I'm gonna also, anytime I'm talking about this, just know that grief is not just about the fact that somebody's passed. Okay, so when I'm sharing this, it's also sharing when I'm talking about grief, I'm talking about it in different aspects of in our life, not just about death. So when and so because we're constantly being shown all these different ways in which people grieve, and that we think that is the way that we should act. It's kind of like the same way that we believe that sometimes, like if somebody's jealous, like if you're in a relationship and somebody's showing jealousy towards you or something, like, oh, he loves me, that kind of idea, that's a false idea, that jealousy is basically equates love. The same thing goes with grief, and that it doesn't mean that you have to be distraught to show that you actually loved somebody and cared about somebody, and that are going to miss this person in your life, or miss this chapter in your life that's ended, or whatever, just because you're not wailing. So again, all these ways in which grief just starts kind of transforming as you start kind of going through time. It does not just go away, it just changes a little bit. And knowing that it will change and will become lighter as you go along brings some comfort. And just know that everybody's time, again, is different in each stage, and some people do live in grief. And you also have to just understand that too, that not everybody just lives with it, but lives in it. And you have to be understanding, because everybody has just different perspectives about it. So those are my 2 cents. I'd love to hear your comments about it, or any other analogies that you think have worked for you in understanding this concept of living with grief or living in grief, and how that differs. I'd love to hear your comments. All right, signing off. See you. Have a beautiful day.